So this video is a continuation of my work bag video where I talked about 5 potential work bags I am currently tracking on the pre-loved market. And it was during my tracking adventures that I figured, why not consider Chanel as well? Now, my beef for Chanel is no secret. The only Chanel bag that I currently own is my wallet on chain back over there. However, piggybacking off that video where I talked about big bags coming back in trend but not quite hitting their peak momentum yet, you can still get a lot more Chanel bag for your Chanel buck. Like, you can find bigger Chanel bags pre-loved for under the price of the walk's current retail price. So I took this as a sign to give Chanel a second look before the pre-loved prices finally catch up to market demands for bigger bags. And that is most definitely happening as we speak. Like, over the past few months, there's been a steady upward creep of pre-loved prices for bigger bags relative to what they have been in the past. So again, not to cause any panic or FOMO, but now really may be the perfect time to snatch up that big bag you've been eyeballing on the pre-loved market before we are about to see them hit peak trending prices. So in this video, I want to share with you my 8 possible Chanel work bag contenders. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let's go ahead and get started. I lied, just like I did in my last video. I just want to remind you that my one and only criteria is that the bag has to measure at least 13 inches in length and 8.5 inches in height so it can fit my work laptop. Now let's go ahead and get started. First up, we have the Chanel Boy Tote. Now this is the bag that kicked off this idea of a Chanel work bag for me. The fact that the Chanel Boy line is not so much at the top of its game at the moment means that pre-loved, they are pretty underpriced. And I personally think the tote variation is stunning. It looks more put together than, say, compare it to like the Louis Vuitton Neverfull or the Goyard whatchamacallit, or even Chanel's own Deauville tote. Like, this to me looks so much more substantial and crafted with the edging and the quilting. I just think it has all the beauty of the boy bag line without any of its irks, Also, the CC logo isn't ostentatious on the boy bag line, so I think this can be super classy and low-key to use for most work environments. Now, this one got a big thumbs up from my husband too, which isn't a must, but I do like it when he likes a bag as well. It just makes it so much easier to sell him on the idea that it has a place in my bag collection. And at about $2K pre-loved for a bag in very good condition, I can stomach those Chanel prices. Second, we have the Chanel Executive Shopper Tote. Now this one comes in a Neo version that's more structured and a Surf version that's more relaxed and not super crisp like the Neo versions, but I'd gladly consider either of these. These bags have just a very subtle CC turn lock in the front. We have very generous top handles. We have exterior pockets, interior zipped pockets. I think they also have a little snap button along the opening for some sort of closure, but it's definitely not fully secured. It also comes with a shoulder strap and a pouch if you are able to find one with the full set. Now, to me, this has a much more corporate feel compared to the Boy Tote, especially the Neo version. But if you get it in the Surf version, I think that one might be easier to style up or down, so you can use it for work or dress it down for just a casual big bag moment as well. Now, prices for these seem to hover around the 2K mark, but I've seen some for as low as $1,000 without the shoulder strap and the pouch. Also, since these are older bags, you're typically not going to find these in pristine condition, which I'm okay with since I'm going to be just as likely to use and abuse them as well. Now, this one also got a giant thumbs up from the hubs. Let's also first establish, though, that he does not like every single bag on this list. In fact, some of the ones that he hates the most are my favorite. All right, next let's talk about the Chanel Gabrielle Maxi and or Large Shopper Tote. I'm grouping these two together because there's just very minor differences between them. Again, Gabrielle is another Chanel line that has had its moment, but let's just say they did not make for the best financial investment by Chanel bag standards, at least. Now this one though is definitely an edgier work bag. You've got the chains and the mixed metals and the aged calfskin. Like, this to me would be a statement work bag. And while it may be a little less put together for a corporate look, at the end of the day, I say you do you. And so even though it is an edgier looking bag, it's still pretty low key because the only logo you have is on the zipper pull. Also, so far on the list, this is the only one with a fully zip top closure. So if security is an issue for you at work or traveling to and from work, then this is one to consider. The one thing though about the Gabrielle is that it has a stiff bottom base. So you better make sure that your largest item is going to fit that bottom compartment or it's gonna look super hinky. The fourth bag on my list is finally a newer style, and it is the Chanel Trendy CC in the large size. Now this is a little pricier than the others. We're looking at 3 to 4K pre-loved, but that's still well under its current boutique price. Now aesthetically, I love that we have a chain strap with a leather shoulder detail to make it a more comfortable shoulder carry, especially if it's gonna be loaded down with like a laptop. We also have one top handle that's generous enough for a crook of the arm moment. We have a very usable back pocket, and we also have a lot more security since we have a flat closure. And overall, this just has a little bit more structure to it, which gives it a really smart, professional, corporate yet feminine vibe. Now this one though might be a bit of a tighter squeeze at about 13 by 10 inches. There's just a lot of compartmentalizing going on with this bag that may actually cut into the usability or the usable space inside the bag. So if I did go this route, I would have to make sure I can return the bag just because there's the possibility that my laptop may not fit. Now this is surprisingly one of my husband's favorite on the list just because it's less of a tote bag and it's more of like a really feminine business briefcase. And by the way, if you are new, welcome to A Briefcase of Luxury, a place where we love to chat about all things related to life, learning, and luxury. And while I have no intentions of quitting my day job as a business professor, I would love to grow this channel so we can all continue on our journey towards more mindful consumption. So thank you so much to those of you who have subscribed, liked, commented, or shared my videos. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't already, I hope you'd consider doing so, especially if, like me, you have a teensy obsession when it comes to a good handbag. Moving on, the rest of the bags on my list are, wait for it, they are all variations of the Chanel classic flap, which I know a classic flap as a work bag may seem a little much, but just hear me out. So sure, we can go for the classic maxi flap, and while prices for these are high, they're still literally like half of its current retail price. So you can typically find a maxi flap in excellent condition for as low as 6K or as low as 4K if you don't mind more vintage versions, and those have the 24K gold plated hardware as well. Now I would probably only opt for the single flap and not the double flap version though, just because I need all the interior space I can get, even height wise. However, this would probably not be my first choice because while I don't mind a designer work bag, even I find the classic flap to be a little too classic for work, you know? I mean, because this bag is so big and the design is so recognizable, I just feel like it's a little much for work compared to even say the Trendy CC, which at least has a more corporate feel to it. So instead, I like the next two variations better. I think they're just a little less uppity. So one of the variations I would prefer is the vintage Chanel Maxi single flap in the washed caviar leather. And I get it, these can still be a little much for some work environments because the CC turn lock is quite big on the vintage versions, but there's just still something about the fact that because it's vintage, it loses a little bit of its muchness, you know? Plus, as far as I can tell, either the leather on these have stretched from use or they were just made to be a smidge bigger, but you can typically find these measuring over 13 inches in length, and I'll take any additional space I can get. But for being vintage and most often not in the best condition, these are pricey at around 3 to 4K. Plus, there's just not that many of these floating around the pre-loved market. So if you find one at that price range in good condition, I mean, take it, just because it may be a while before another one drops again. Now the other variation is the maxi chain version, and these are even a smidge bigger than the soft maxis. Like, we're looking at closer to almost 14 inches in length. I will say though, the chain detail throughout may make this a little too casual for certain workplaces. Also, unlike the other two that have the two grommets for the chain strap, so you could technically carry them multiple ways, this chain version is a shoulder-only bag. I don't know how much of a concern that really is, but maybe just because it's a flat style bag, you would expect it to be more versatile. But on the bright side, I feel like there's a small but consistent rotation of these on the pre-loved market, and prices are on the lower end for a flat style bag. So you're looking at the high 2,000 to the low 3,000 range. Now, before I introduce my 8th and final pick, let's just establish that my husband is not a fan of any of the classic flaps in the maxi size, just because he feels like they are unproportionately big. I think he compared it to when Louis Vuitton blew up their SLGs a couple of seasons ago. You remember that? Which I think is a little dramatic of a comparison, but I get where he's coming from. He's a traditionalist and believes that the classic flap shouldn't be bigger than like the medium size. With that being said, he hates this NYX bag, which I saved for last because it is hands down my favorite. I mean, not like my favorite Chanel bag ever, but my favorite Chanel work bag contender, and it is the Chanel 19 in the maxi size. Now, before I get into why I like this the most, let me explain why he likes this the least. One, it's out of whack with the rest of my collection, as in it's extremely flashy with the big Chanel logo and the chunky mixed metals. Two, this in his eyes is the quintessential example of what it means to blow up a bag to comical proportions. With the big quilting and the puffiness, he basically thinks that the bag is too big for the design. And because of all that, 3, he thinks it's too trendy and it's not timeless or elegant enough to be a work bag that I would be using for years to come. You know, he would rather I just get a regular mini or small classic flap for everyday use and then get something like the large trendy CC for work instead. Now, I hear him, I understand where he's coming from, but here are my rebuttals for why this is my number 1 pick. 1, I get that it's flashy, but I think it's time to have a little bit of flash in my collection. 2, I've never been one to follow trends, so the fact that this may or may not go out of style quickly is really not a concern for me. And 3, the size is exactly why I like it. At 14 inches in length, my laptop would fit the most comfortably in the Maxi 19 out of all the other flap style bags. And my bonus rebuttal, and this one is the one that may win him over, is that because it is a floppy bag, unlike the other classic flap bags, I can see me using this for more than just work. So it actually pulls double duty. Like the trendy CC, I would feel silly using that for any other occasion because it's just so structured and polished. But because the 19 can get floppy if it's not filled to the brim, this easily shrinks down in size and takes on almost a casual slouchy hobo look. And I think I could use that for more than just work in that case. So for him, it means I can actually carry more of his stuff too, versus like the small or the mini flap. Like he could load me down like a pack mule and we would still be good to go. So really, he's the one that comes out on top, you know? I really feel like this is the year to add a preloved Chanel work bag, especially in a larger size. So please let me know down in the comments below, which of the 8 bags would you pick and why? Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and I hope to see you next time.